Hi, I'm Bill Smolsky. Welcome to the MacIver Report. This is the MacIver Institute's weekly staff podcast. I am joined today, as always, by
Michael Lucas, policy analyst.
Rebecca Dreger, intern here.
Great. Hey, thank you both for being here again today. We're going to start off this time with a story that we just posted yesterday. So November 19th. Today we're recording this on Wednesday. We always release these on Thursdays, but this is a big one. This is major state agencies don't have a budget. Now, how do we even approach this? I mean, I guess we all take for granted that every organization has a budget. The MacIver Institute for 15 years now has made budgets, the state budget, one of our top priorities. That is something that we always focus on. We analyze it, we pick it apart, we tell everybody this is where they're spending your money, this is where they're wasting your money. Now, without getting too much in the weeds of how businesses work, the state budget is called a master budget. There's it's supposed to be all these other little budgets underneath the master budget that help you actually run your organization. So, for example, you would expect that, okay, you got the state budget, then you would expect, say, Department of Public Instruction has its own budget that takes the money that the legislature allocates to it and disperses it among its programs and determines, okay, this is what each program's staffing is going to cost. These are the services they're going to have to buy. So every department would have its own operating budget. Every program would have its own little budget. So lots of budgets on top of budgets. Mike got started with this. He did a lot of the initial research. So Mike, tell us a little bit about the assignment that you got in July. Then I'll pick it up where I take the data that you gave me and I wrote about it.
Yeah, so for a bunch of agencies, I submitted, open records requests requesting their operating budget for the fiscal year. And almost all of them sent something back to me. And all of them that did send something back to me ended up sending me what was essentially a summary statement or a memo of what the legislature had approved to them. So most of them just end up giving me the total dollar amount of money that was allocated to them, or what they got from the previous year and what they're getting this year. But there's absolutely no detail regarding what the money is going to be spent on specifically. And I was very specific in my open records request to say, I want your operational line itemized budget.
You had some agencies that said, we don't have a budget.
Oh yeah, I can't remember which one it was. DMA. I submitted a records request after the deadline for which they're supposed to have, put together their budget request and sent to the state. And they came back to me and we haven't yet finalized our budget.
Oh no, that was DOT.
Oh, that was DOT.
Yeah, DMA actually said, we don't have a document that lays out.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, DOT said we don't have that, and so I ended up having to submit an entirely separate open records request for their budget a few weeks later, to which they responded a month ago. Yeah.
So just to go through these real quick, and I'll show these on the screen real quick for people that are watching the video podcast, but DMA, we asked for that's Department of Military Affairs here in Wisconsin. We asked for their operating budget. They gave us this a link to this informational packet that the Legislative Fiscal Bureau prepares for lawmakers so that they know what they're voting on in the budget. It's not a budget, it's a informational packet. Department of Corrections, same thing. They sent us the Legislative Fiscal Bureau's informational packets. DPI, or that's DHS next. DHS sent us essentially an income statement. All this is, a lot of lines here. All this is they're different sources of revenue, so all the different places that they get their money from, and then how they allocated it among 6 broad spending categories. So we got this much money from the feds for this program revenue for this. We got this much money from the state and just general purpose revenue, and this is how much we spent for salaries. Not a budget. You can't look at the idea of a budget, again, is that you come in, month by month, you can look at this document, figure out if we're on track, if we're meeting our goals. You can't do that with this. This is not broken down. This is not a detailed enough document in order to run any organization off of. And then DPI, they sent us just the basics, broad line allocations. The biggest problem with this DPI, document is that DPI spends about $8 billion a year, and this document only captures $150 million in spending.
Yeah.
So that is a huge red flag. Some points about this investigation that we did. We did open records request because that was the way to confirm that these agencies don't have an operating budget. Mm-hmm. When we ask, under state law, we ask an agency for its operating budget, it has to give it to us. So the fact that this is what they give us instead proves to us that these agencies don't have budgets. If we had just been looking on their website and we couldn't find it, well, that's worthless. We are not accusing these agencies of stealing money. Going through other documents, we know they keep track of every penny they spend, which in a way makes this worse because they have all the pieces of data they need in order to construct a budget. They just aren't doing it.
Yep.
So, this is something that's fairly easy to resolve. Yeah, it's going to take some work on these agencies. Putting a budget together is hard work. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of effort, but it needs to be done. Without it, you are not managing your resources. You can't prioritize your spending. You're essentially just coming in every day. You're blowing money, not checking to see if it's doing any good. And the lawmakers, they need to start, holding these agencies' feet to the fire about this. And this is also something where Rebecca, I was telling you, this is groundbreaking research. It's sad that this is groundbreaking research, but nobody's ever discovered that these agencies don't have budgets before.
Yeah.
Kind of like with the school district thing that that you and I were working on, where we were discovering all these school districts don't have budgets. This is like one of the things that at MacIver we're always trying to get to the bottom of things. We're just trying to get one more layer. What do you know? How do you know it? How do you know that? And so all the time we're always trying to get further and further down to the root cause of things. And after all these years, we're finally getting to the root cause where we always just assumed that governments have budgets, and we're learning that they don't.
Yep.
Which, so I guess this is a good segue into our next topic for the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
The Trump appointments. So, Michael, this is something that, you've really been keeping a close eye on. So, we talked about this last week, and you've updated these slides too, so that we can see the ones in white are from last week, and then the ones that are in that are highlighted are the ones that happened since our last podcast. So we'll start with the Trump appointments.
Yeah, those
Cabinet.
are the new ones confirmed. So Cabinet, Rebecca said this last time, but yeah, Marco Rubio is Secretary of State. Everyone knows. This is a disaster. I'll come back to that. Attorney General Matt Gaetz, that's confirmed. A lot of people are excited about that. The left is excited as well, but in a bad way. What did the DOJ recently accused him of, like pedophilia or something of that nature, but is refusing to press charges.
Yeah, there's something weird behind the scenes there that I'm sure is going to get uncovered here.
Yeah, so that's a good sign. Making very serious criminal allegations against a presumed incoming Attorney General of the United States of America, and not following through on
So either there's something there. I don't think they'd be holding their punches if there was something there.
Why would they? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So if there's not something there, we already know that it's with all the witch hunting that's been going on over the past 8 years on Trump. It ain't going to be happening anymore.
Why would you let any sort of criminal activity fly?
So if you got people that are leaking things and people in their official capacity making up rumors, there's going to be some accountability coming down the line.
Yeah. Department of the Interior, Doug Burgum. Thomas Massey, this is speculative, but at least a month or two ago, his name was floated around as being the head of the Department of Agriculture, which he said publicly on X that he was open to. So
Okay.
keep you updated on that. RFK is confirmed for the HHS. The left absolutely hates this, which is really, really good news,
You know, this is so fun.
right?
I mean, nobody, a lot of like just the baseline stuff they say, like, you know, Americans spend the most on healthcare in the world, and we're the least healthy people in the world, you know, and things that, you know, like hippies and a lot of, you know, liberals don't like. Hey, you got on the right and on the left, people like organic food. They don't like, you know, yellow dye number 5 in their, you know, in their food.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people that are, you know, a lot of people on the left, I think, are getting caught up in this, you know, all this excitement. Oh, this is horrible. He's, you know, taking on big pharma, you know, but I think it's going to, after it's settled a little bit, a lot of people on the left are like, wait a minute, he's going to take on big pharma.
Yeah, I mean, like, people on the left have been complaining about big ag and big pharma and big insurance and like all of these things for decades and decades.
Yeah.
And finally, people on the right are saying publicly, you were right. You were right about all of that. You're wrong about all the vegan crap, but you're right about, you know, everything else. And now you're stepping back from that. You're abandoning those positions. That doesn't make any sense at all. It shows that they weren't actually principally committed to any of these causes. It was just a way of signaling that they were opposed to whatever the conservatives or the Republicans stood for.
Now, I think there's a lot of people that are like that, but I think this is going to peel some people away from the left. Because,
big time.
Because there are people on the
Yes.
left where, for them, it wasn't just a bandwagon thing. It was, you know, they're on board with that.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of people on the left who are, you know, like the core sort of ideologues around any of these issues. Like being from California and Santa Cruz, there's an anti-vax community, big time.
Yeah.
And Santa Cruz is a left-wing commie pinko, you know, county in, you know, the Central Coast region of California. There's a lot of that on the left.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of people on the left that are concerned about whatever.
Well, there's going to be some sweating because they're all of a sudden they're going to be with their two loves. You know, it's like, oh, we want organic living and we want communism. It's like, all right, you got to pick now. Which one do you want?
But yeah, so I do think that'll peel some people away from the left, like you said. I'm really excited about that. I love seeing the back and forth between RFK and Senator Rand Paul. That's been going on X, where RFK, you know, made a post and he said, Tony Fauci, I'm still looking for you. And Rand Paul, you know, reposted and says, me too, because maybe I'll save that for the next one. I didn't put it in the slide. That's my bad.
Oh.
But I'll just tell you right now. Rand Paul is now chairman of the Senate Committee on, what is it? It's like a health oversight committee. I can't remember what it was called. But he's now chairman of that, which is great.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely great. So as a committee chairman in the Congress, you have authority over determining which bills, you know, the Senate is going to see and which committees to refer them to. And if they shall be, you know, referred to committee at all.
That is so encouraging.
Yeah.
Because to have like a cabinet secretary and the head of one of these committees on the same page, I mean, this is not something that's happened for conservatives for a very long time. So.
Yeah. I have it right here, the exact, well, I'll find it eventually.
All right,
we'll move on to the next one.
We'll move on. DOT, Sean Duffy.
Yeah, DOT, Sean Duffy. Don't know anything about that. DOE, Chris Wright. Veteran Affairs, Doug Collins.
Hang on, we need a pause on DOT, though, because Sean Duffy, former Wisconsin congressman, a lot of people love him here. They always want him to come back and run for governor. There was something that broke yesterday, Mark Belling, the radio show host in Milwaukee, that Sean Duffy was the second choice. The first choice was Tim Michels.
Okay.
Tim Michels, who ran for governor in Wisconsin 2 years ago. I know a lot of people have already forgotten him. Interesting. So, Tim Michels is a road builder. his family is a multi-billion-dollar road construction company. And so he's got a vested interest in transportation spending. Donald Trump said, okay, I want you to be, I endorse you for governor. I want you to be the transportation secretary. You know a lot about it. But you got to divest yourself from your company. So suddenly, Tim Michels was not interested, reportedly, in being DOT secretary after he wasn't going to be making all that money off of taxpayers anymore. And, on a side note, too, hey, Tim Michels, he was a Republican candidate for governor. He ran a really lazy campaign, low energy. He, all kinds of rumors about his work ethic. We don't know if that's true or not, but we do know that, he really didn't spend a lot of time traveling the state or, really trying to drum up votes, and, he lost. I have a hard time imagining that somebody like that is going to be very successful working for a guy like Donald Trump. Something tells me that Donald Trump expects people to give him the full effort. He's probably like, if you're one of his cabinet secretaries, something tells me you're on call 24/7.
Yeah.
So hopefully Sean Duffy fits the bill for that a little bit better.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, while you were talking, I found what Rand Paul is. So he is chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, which does Homeland Security. That's a super broad.
COVID vaccines. That was
area.
Homeland Security,
yeah,
right?
That's all Homeland Security stuff. So excited about that.
Yeah.
And also in that connection, he's on the next slide, but this is speculative as well. Jay Bhattacharya.
All right, who's Jay Bhattacharya?
Jay Bhattacharya was one of the thought leaders, one of the public figureheads of, the mistaken policy of instituting nationwide, globe-spanning lockdowns during COVID. He was hypercritical of masks, of forced vaccination, of social distancing, of all of that stuff that now virtually everyone understands was wrong.
Yeah.
And that Jay Bhattacharya, stressed that CDC, NIH, Anthony Fauci, the G7, the UN, all of them knew that stuff wouldn't work in advance. And so Jay Bhattacharya is being considered now to run the NIH. So you have sort of a trifecta here. You've got Rand Paul, you've got RFK, and you've got Jay Bhattacharya really taking over as sort of the health area of the federal government.
No wonder why the deep state is terrified.
So the left, of course, they don't really know who Jay Bhattacharya is because
they'll figure it out real
they
fast.
just ignored him for years and years. But they don't like him, so that's good.
Okay, then moving on to ambassadors. I know you and I talked that we had a new NATO ambassador announcement today, but nothing that really stood out for me on those.
There's a bunch of other appointments that I just didn't put on because I didn't know who these people were and whatnot. But another one that I'll add now is Dr. Oz.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Oz is being considered to lead the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services.
I wonder how many of these are just like, just like traps. It's like, I don't want, I may appoint, what's this guy's name? Jay Bhattacharya.
Bhattacharya, yeah.
I'm gonna appoint Jay to the NIH, but to distract the media in the meantime, I'm gonna appoint Dr. Oz to take care of Medicaid.
Yeah. But gosh, okay, so all that done, Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio is probably definitely the worst pick of any of the picks that Trump has made so far. Trump's platform has been that, no new wars, right? Strength through peace, all of this stuff that people on the conservative side are totally on board with, right? Let's stay out of the frickin' desert. Let's avoid World War III with Russia. Also, China, who cares? We like the cheap stuff that comes in. Although I guess lots of people, who support Trump are in favor of tariffs, which is okay. It's a mistake. We'll do a whole another podcast about that. But yeah, Marco Rubio's bad news. He's got a mixed record on Russia and Ukraine. He twice voted to send Ukraine money and weapons. Recently, this year, he's been opposed to it, probably because Trump has been very critical of that, and Marco Rubio and Trump are friends. On Iran, he is a huge war hawk. Absolutely terrible record. Quote, Iran's ambition is to be a regional hegemonic power and seeks to drive America out of the region and then destroy Israel. He also says that Hezbollah in Lebanon is a, quote, full-blown agent of Iran right on Israel's border, and that wiping them out would be, quote, a service to humanity. And this is like, just to let you know how like much of a hardliner he is on Iran. He said this in an interview, quote, if the Iranian regime did not exist, there would be no Hezbollah. There probably would be no Hamas. There certainly would be no Houthi threat. Syria would look very different. Iraq would look very different. Imagine a region without the Iranian regime. What on earth could that possibly mean? What could that mean? It means one thing and one thing only.
I remember
overthrowing the Iranian government, which is exactly what all the neocon John Bolton, Dick Cheneys have wanted for the last 50 years. Ever since the Iranians overthrew the Shah that we imposed on them. They have never forgiven them for throwing off the dictator that we installed above them.
Yeah, regime change. That used to be a really popular policy. I don't know how popular it is right now, but...
Well, it's like, for people like Rubio, it's like, read the room. We're done with the Middle East.
Yeah.
Like, no one wants to send their kids to bleed out in the desert anymore.
Well, the Republicans tried this, in the early 2000s. The Democrats did this in the 2010s. Yeah, I don't know how much support you're going to get on either side for this. At least I'd like to think.
Yeah.
Well, the Republican Party's changed too, because a lot of the people that want regime change are they call themselves Republicans.
Yep.
They haven't voted for a Republican president 3 election cycles in a row.
Yep, and we have a very apt term for those people, rhinos.
Yep, rhinos, never Trumpers. They're a dying, they're an endangered species.
Yeah, and they've all endorsed Kamala Harris, so you know exactly who they are. But he's really bad in Iran. I think it's a really big mistake. We talked a little bit about the Iran deal and whatnot. And then the other big one, the other theater that the U.S. really wants to get involved with is now China and the rest of Asia. And for Rubio, China is like the number one top dog concern for the United States. He said, quote, the gravest threat facing America today, the threat that will define this century is China. So this shift away from Russia and Ukraine is really, in my opinion, just a means to redirect attention towards China.
It's really, like having the military perspective too. It's interesting to see, these 3 theaters of conflict and potential conflict, how the military community perceives them. In Wisconsin, we got lots of Wisconsin National Guardsmen that are in deployed right now. They're all deployed to the Middle East. At least the units are. Individuals, they get sent all over. But as all the units that we send over, it's always the Middle East. The Middle East is our only combat zone. The only place where American soldiers are actually engaging enemies, shooting them, getting shot at. It's all reservists and National Guardsmen now. The regular army is sick of the Middle East. They are not interested in it. It's not a sexy war for them anymore. They've all, the expression, been there, done that, got the T-shirt.
Yeah, it's hot, it's dry.
Yeah,
I want to change my underwear.
We want a new challenge. So, it's like the military, like all the resources, it's all going to Europe. They all want to shoot Russians.
Yep.
And then all the big strategic thinkers, they're obsessed with China. So those are the 2 fights that they want. Nobody in the military is really excited about the idea of going and fighting in Iran.
Yeah, not at all. Some of the people listening might be familiar with John Mearsheimer, who is, an academic, foreign policy, sort of person. And he's really good on, Middle East involvement and Russia, Ukraine, and all of the things that we've done in Europe. But even for him, he says China is the threat. We need to direct our attention towards China. In contrast to his friend Jeff Sachs, who says, you don't need to worry about any of those places. Right?
Yeah.
The U.S. could come home, slash its defense budget to a tenth of what it currently is, and you'll still be perfectly safe. Just put a couple of submarines, in the Atlantic and the Pacific, and you're good to go. But yeah, a lot of people think that China is the threat. I'll tell you, from an economic point of view, they're not at all a threat.
Yeah.
They are dirt poor. And just think about, on the human level, how many Chinese citizens do you think are really adamant supporters of the communist oligarchy that rules over them at the moment?
Well, war is always a, unifying event for any society, though. If they go to war with the U.S., they're all going to be pro-communist government.
Yeah, I guess, but they don't have the money. I think GDP per capita GDP in China is $19,000.
Well, we are stumbling
this
into
is
a Rebecca specialty area, aren't we? Because you're international studies and.
I would definitely say I'm learning a lot about these different topics, but I was going to say the GDP per capita in China is very low compared to the U.S., and there's a lot of people living outside of cities in grave poverty.
Yeah.
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 All right, so taking this again from my unique background in the military and managing contracts and things like that, and also being, a horrible cynic. I'm looking at this from, all right, Rubio is going to try to drum up a war in the Middle East. Everyone's sick of the Middle East. China, people are really excited about China, but there's a lot of money tied up with China. We got so many connections with them. Russia. Now that's the meat grinder that I can, sell a lot of missiles to the U.S. Army, and there's no bottom to that market. I could just, that's where I'm going to make my money.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm going to be pushing for war, is against Russia.
Yeah, because there's nothing, economically to lose. There's no industries that are saying, no, don't get involved in Russia. So Russia, of course, I think they're the number 2 or the number 3 crude oil producer in the world. The United States, by the way, is number 1, has been for a few years now. We import heavy crude oil, which is what our refining industry is suited to refine into gasoline. Okay, we don't get that from Russia. We get a little bit from Saudi Arabia, of course, but most of it we get from Canada. Nothing from Russia.
Yeah.
Nothing from Russia, and that's Russia's biggest market is oil, and we're not involved. So there's nothing to prevent the powers that be from preventing a Department of Defense and the deep state from launching a war against Russia or supporting a proxy war against.
Yeah, yeah. So if I were to make bets, based off of all this, I'd say, if we're going to have a war, the deep state wants us to go to war with Russia. Number 1, probably Iran a distant second, and China's a distant third. And that's
very distant third.
They're happy to spend some money, on strategic, moves, hey, let's get rid of all the Marines' tanks and sell them something stupid because we say we got to go to China next, or let's start selling the military all these amphibious vehicles to fight China, even though we don't really want to go to war with China. They're happy to do that.
Yeah. It's really the Asian theater. It's Taiwan, right? Which, by the way, Marco Rubio acknowledges the sovereignty of Taiwan and does not concur with the official one China policy of the United States. So as Secretary of State, that's a little problematic. Also problematic is the fact that China has sanctioned Rubio personally twice.
Oh.
And he is not allowed into the country. So it's kind of hard to pursue diplomacy if one of your if your main rival, the biggest threat to American democracy or America's future, doesn't even let you set foot on their soil.
I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think a lot Chinese, a lot of these dictators are going to be rolling over for a lot of things. Now that Trump's in charge, but Rebecca, you were going to say.
I was going to ask. I wasn't aware that he wasn't allowed in China. Do you think that'll stay through the presidency, or is that just something that they have to deal with now?
Yeah, I already said they're probably going to roll over, but
who knows? Yeah, I don't know. I'll just say yes, it's going to stay because it would just be a really bad look for Marco Rubio. It would make him ineffective, and then after 1 year, Trump would replace him.
All right. We're talking Washington federal stuff, so we're going to stick with that. The big cultural story right now in Washington is over a bill in Congress to to ban transgenders from using their preferred bathrooms in the Capitol. So, introduced by Representative Nancy Mace. She's getting, she's probably making a lot of money off of this. She's on social media all about it, talking about it. But the left is also, hating on her pretty bad too. And here's a quick clip of a reporter confronting her over the policy and her response.
The question is, with your piece of legislation about banning women from using...
100% yes.
My question to you is...
And it doesn't go far enough. I'll be filing more bills.
You have said that it was created in response to Congresswoman-elect McBride.
100%. And
but should legislation be created targeted at one specific person?
It doesn't mention anyone in the legislation, but
you've said it was aimed at her.
No, I have said it's a result of this. I'm not going to allow biological men into women's private spaces. I will stand in the brink and stand in the way of anyone on the radical left who thinks that it's okay for a penis to be in a women's locker room or a bathroom or a changing room. Hell no. I am not going to stand for it. And the Speaker said it would be in the House rules package. If it's not, I'll be ready with a motion, a privileged motion to force a vote on this. This is not okay. I'm a survivor of rape. I'm a survivor of sexual abuse. And I'm not going to allow any man in any female private spaces.
Now, Speaker.
End of story. And by the way, I'm getting death threats from men pretending to be women. Why is it that these crazy people, the insanity, the radical left, are willing to kill women over a man's right to be in a women's restroom?
Speaker Johnson has said he wants to treat every new member with the words dignity and respect. Forcing this congressperson to go into a male restroom, is that dignity and respect?
Forcing women to share private spaces with men is not dignity and not respect. And I'm absolutely going to stand in the way of anyone who thinks it's okay for a man to be in our locker room, in our changing rooms, in our dressing rooms, in women's bathrooms. And in fact, if you agree with that, you're crazy, because that's not okay. It's not okay.
All right, so this all comes down to the first transgender congressperson from Delaware, this person, Sarah McBride. And real quick, just talking about our own Wisconsin delegation here. This is how Gwen Moore reacted. She's so happy that Sarah McBride is in Congress. Here's Mark Pocan. He's all, Mark Pocan's always on Twitter, attacking somebody. He's upset, he's yelling at Nancy now for, getting all this attention over this issue. And, so then here's my file photo of Mark Pocan with a couple of drag queens in his office in Washington. So that's the type of person that's on the other side of this issue. Any thoughts on this fight in D.C.? Is this a distraction? Is this an important point? Does Representative Nancy Mace, does she have a point being a rape victim?
Yeah, you start. I've talked a lot.
I think it's really ridiculous. I mean, this isn't going to impact your average voter. It's really a cultural issue. But I think as a cultural issue, it is important. It's not just about the bathrooms, the Capitol, and those kinds of things. It's about school districts and general public society. What do we allow and what don't we allow? What is acceptable and what's not? So, yeah, I think it's important.
All right. So you mentioned school districts.
Mm-hmm.
This was a kind of a way to segue it back into Wisconsin, because this is one that you wanted to talk about. Watertown Unified School District approves controversial guidelines for transgender students. So I guess real quick about the, before we really get into this, there is a backlash around the country on this stuff. People are sick of playing pretend with, on this issue. A man's a man, a woman's a woman, first salvo of this current fight is, in D.C. over the bathrooms, but this is an issue that the American people are turning against really fast. I mean, we saw a lot of these political ads during the campaigns of, it didn't work for Hovde, but, the whole, Hovde's for us and Tammy Baldwin's for they, them. So it was a clever slogan, but I think it really starts to capture how people are feeling about this.
Yeah.
Like real quick, just to throw Mark Pocan back up there. I mean, this is the other side. This is deviant behavior. This is not normal. People are not a fan of this, and they're sick of going along to get along. And there's a lot of pushback that's coming along, and the mainstream media still hasn't picked up on it. Hence, why CBS 58's calls these school district policies controversial. But I mean that school board meeting. Well, why don't you walk us through this real quick, Rebecca, about what this is all about?
Yeah. So currently, I mean, before Monday, when this was voted on, Watertown School District had a policy that started in 2016 that allowed students to use bathrooms and to enter into sports with their gender identity, not their biological sex. And so they were voting on whether or not this should be changed or stay the same, and they changed it to one that makes sure that students have to use bathrooms and be in sports aligned with their biological sex. Yeah.
So, all the news reports showed, I mean, that meeting was packed. Hundreds of parents, and they were all for these supposedly controversial guidelines that did away with all that. So, none of the news stories talked about what the actual policy did, so we'll talk about it briefly here. Some of the, and it's it's like a 2 or 3 page policy, but I mean here's the meat of it. Names. Nobody's going to be required to call any student by any pronoun or name contrary to their biological sex. Official records are going to include the legal birth name and biological sex. Sports, students are only allowed to participate in intramural and extracurricular activities that are consistent with their biological sex and the rules of the WIAA. And trips, I think this is probably one of the most important ones. You go on a high school trip, yeah, you don't have to worry. If you're sending your daughter off on a high school trip, you don't have to worry about her being bunked with some dude that thinks he's a girl.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big one. Yeah. Like, if anyone remembers, when you did do trips like this, where you do like some overnight camping thing or whatever, you got like 4, 5, 6 kids assigned to like a dorm or a room.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you have a communal bathroom setting, right? With, somewhat open showers or toilets or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know how it is.
No.
I mean, like when I went to high school, we did band trips, pretty big trips. And I remember, it would be me and 3 other boys in a hotel room,
Yeah.
2 queen beds. You're bunking up.
Yeah.
We didn't think about that. This is the 90s. I mean, I don't know if this was... Nobody thought about, anything going on between boys. I mean, we knew that there were guys that did, but I mean, it wasn't just... It didn't seem like a big deal.
Yeah.
I think it would be a huge deal, though, if you were sharing a queen bed with somebody of the opposite sex.
Yeah. And also the other thing, too, that is like put in place as a protection is typically one teacher is assigned to each room, or one
really?
teacher is covering two rooms that are like a Jack and Jill sort of situation,
Okay.
right? But kids are kids, and when everyone is supposed to be doing an activity and you got 70, 90, 120 kids, some of them are sneaking off.
Well, yeah, and you can't.
Right,
You
and you can't
police
really
that
do
so
anything
well.
about that.
It's a
But-
lot different though if you're sleeping in a bed and then you're the person next to you rolls over and feels frisky and
Yeah, but point I will make is that if you got a boy and a girl and their boyfriend and girlfriend and the boy claims to be a girl,
Oh, hey, that's a good scam.
right? Oh, we're gonna go back to the room, right, that we're assigned to.
Yeah.
Whatever. And it's like, okay, they're allowed to be in there.
Yeah.
If you have this whatever transgender policy for things like this. But anyway,
Yeah, I never remember this stuff being an issue, even the hanky-panky stuff on those. I'm sure things happen, but it wasn't like an orgy or it was kept quiet, whoever was doing it.
yeah, it's not kept quiet anymore. Walk through the halls of a high school.
I know.
They brag about it.
I'm an old man at this point. So, I mean, it was a different world.
Yeah.
All right. Shifting gears again, we need to talk about the law type stuff, getting back to the elections. This is something, I've been harping on this issue for years and years and years. We talked about it last time, but we ran out of room on the cards, so we have to do it again. But bringing up district attorneys. District attorney is the most powerful elected position in the county. And the DA, so you have all kinds of crimes that happen in your community. The government does not have the resources to pursue all of those crimes. They need to prioritize what crimes are we going to prosecute, what criminals are the most, are we most concerned with getting off the street. The person that makes that decision is the district attorney, because the district attorney then is the prosecutor and decides what cases are going to be prosecuted at the county courthouse. So this is why George Soros is so obsessed with getting district attorneys elected around the country, and all these cities that had riots. It was because George Soros got a liberal district attorney elected who said it is not a priority to prosecute rioters or anything like that, or looters. So this is a huge safety issue. This is, just law and order. Wisconsinites have shown repeatedly that they want Republican district attorneys because those are the ones that they can expect to keep them safe, to prosecute people that are committing actual crimes, rape, murders, all that stuff. They know that they are better off having a Republican in that position to prosecute them than a Democrat. Going back 4 years, Wisconsin voters, out of 71 district attorney races, elected 41 Republicans and 23 Democrats. Now, unfortunately, a lot of these Republicans that decided to run in these elections, they didn't take it seriously. A lot of them resigned. When you have a Democrat governor and the district attorney resigns, the Democrat governor is going to pick a Democrat to replace them. The governor gets to replace district attorneys who resign, who don't complete their term. So, by the time 2024 came around, we had a lot more Democrat district attorneys than Republican ones. So that's a slap in the face to Republican voters around the state. 2024, opportunity to take them all back. Unfortunately, almost every race for district attorney is uncontested. I think there were only like 3 or 4 that were uncontested, that were actually contested this time around. So, 71 seats, Republicans won 36. Those are the 36 races that Republicans put candidates in. So there were 35 counties around the state that did not have a Republican candidate running for district attorney. So they got stuck with 22 Democrats. And I will tell you that the 13 supposedly independents, a lot of those are Republican counties. They're Democrats. They said they're an independent so that in case somebody ran against them, that they'd say, oh no, we're an independent, we're right, we just care about the law, we don't want politics. So they're playing that off, they're Democrats. So this is just a great example of how conservatives, Republicans, people on the right law and order is a huge issue among people on the right. This is the way to start demonstrating it. There's got to be conservative lawyers out there that would be really well suited for these positions.
Yeah, you would think. Although I'm a little skeptical of that. Learning what I've learned about law schools, today and for the last however many decades, is they are breeding, training, bringing up an entire generation of left-wing activists, lawyers,
that's
judges.
That's terrifying.
So it's like if you are, a conservative person interested in going to law school and you hear that, you might go, well, maybe I'll just become a physician instead. Maybe I'll get some other professional degree or something like that. I'll just master's in accounting, my MBA or whatever else, right? So maybe that's part of it. Or they are choosing to go the private sector. If you're a good lawyer and your choice is between a public position and a private one, the private one's going to pay better, right? 9 times out of 10.
And I know one of the factors that comes up, where let's say you do have a small town lawyer, that'd be a great conservative. And like you said, they got a private practice. they run for district attorney as a Republican, let's say they lose, or they're done and they want to go back to private practice. All those people that they rubbed the wrong way, all those liberal judges that they were fighting, as district attorney, leave a lot of bad blood, I guess. But I mean, this is a real need. We need Republican district attorneys. We need good conservative prosecutors. So, it's if the profession was a calling, maybe they should remember that and consider that. Maybe I need to give back to my communities. Maybe, I've got all these principles. I got all this education. Here is something that my community really needs, and this is where I fit in. And maybe I won't make as much money as I am now, but this is the right thing to do. I would like to think that we got at least 71 lawyers like that around the state that would fit that description.
Yeah, and maybe so now with a Trump victory, these people will, find their courage.
A lot of them
decide, now is a good time.
But a lot of them are hoping for that appointment. We got two really top-notch conservative lawyers in Wisconsin, but they aren't interested in running for anything. They want to be U.S. attorneys.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the next thing, Wisconsin Supreme Court race. This is hands down the most important race in the country next year. You look at all the liberal plans, everything they're putting online. Wisconsin Supreme Court race 2025. That's it. Wisconsin's a battleground state. They want to have a friendly court. If the conservatives win this election, it will again be a conservative-leaning Supreme Court. The liberals win it, they will secure it as a liberal Supreme Court. These are the two candidates. We got Judge Susan Crawford on the left and Judge Brad Schimmel on the right. Crawford is the liberal candidate. Schimmel is the conservative candidate. These are the two candidates. No getting around it.
Yep.
There is... the papers are due in less than a month. Nobody else is circulating papers. So, like it or not, these are the two choices. And real quick before we get into discussion, I just want to play this clip again from Rebecca Dallitz on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, one of the liberals. This is how liberal Supreme Court justices think and talk.
So in 1849, we're talking about a time when the only people that had rights were white men, correct? With property. White men who owned property, sorry. Is that right?
I'll take your word for it, Justice
Okay,
Dallin.
well, you can take my word for it. You can go look up when anyone else got rights. What about everything that's happened since 1849 in the policy choice that you're talking about that some white men who were property owners made?
Counsel, I'd like to return to a statement that Justice Dallett made to you. Are you aware of any principle of law that instructs judges or justices to disregard an enactment of the legislature based on the race or gender of the enactors?
I am not, Justice Bradley, and I'm not aware of any such enactment that says you should disregard a statute based on how old it is.
Okay, so what is your take on the Wisconsin Supreme Court? We'll start with you, and then Rebecca, you could think about, how you want to.
Oh gosh. Well, going back to the activism thing, yeah, that's totally what that is. Judge coming out and just anyone who says what she said immediately reveals all of your political biases. We know exactly what you stand for. We know exactly what it is that you're going to work to pursue and how you're going to use your authority as a judge in order to pursue what you want. Like, for example, ignoring certain Wisconsin statutes because they were written and ratified and passed and signed by governors who were white land-owning men, however many years ago in the 1840s or 50s. So you have that, and then also disregarding them because they were old. Doesn't make any sense. I mean, Wisconsin statutes don't have sunset provisions.
Yeah.
They exist in perpetuity unless repealed or, usurped formally by a new act of legislation that specifically says that statute XYZ whatever is hereby nullified or null and void, and this statute now takes precedent.
Yeah.
But that hasn't been done.
Rebecca?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree, and like from the clip, it was very clear that she was talking about the emotionality of the abortion argument and not the legality of the abortion ban. So,
And then I guess, just my brief thoughts. I said these are the two candidates. I mean, we got a liberal activist court right now. They don't care what the law says. They don't care what the words are on the paper in front of them. They're going to make those words say what they want them to say. They want, I call them the supreme legislature, because if they don't like the law, they're just going to change the law. Schimmel, I guess it really doesn't matter if he's a conservative or not.
It's just not Susan Crawford.
Just not a liberal activist judge.
Yeah.
I mean, the expectation for our Supreme Court justices, they are going to look at the law, acknowledge what words are on the piece of paper in that law, and interpret whatever case is based off of that.
Yeah.
You want this to happen, the other side wants that to happen. Here's what the law says, black and white, so this is how I'm ruling. Now I know there's still a bitter taste in a lot of people's mouths over Brian Hagedorn, who, portrayed himself as a conservative judge, and, quite frankly, he proved himself to be a moral coward on the court. He rules a lot of times he rules just to, take the heat off of himself from the left. Really disappointing, but he gets more right than he gets wrong. It's just the ones that he gets wrong are the ones that we all talk about.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I mean, he at the end of the day, he was a better pick from the liberal that he defeated. Even if he isn't really a conservative, he's just a centrist. So Brad Schimmel, he says he's a conservative. He was the Republican Attorney General in this state for I think 8 years. So he's got the background. And like I said, even if he proves to not be the best conservative, the conservative that a lot of people want, he's still going to be a far better. I mean, he's like I said, even if he weren't a conservative, he was just a moderate. That's fine. Just read the dang law and rule.
Yeah.
I heard an expression recently, and I've heard it before many times, so I don't feel bad saying it here. Democrats vote for causes, and Republicans vote for people. And when you vote for people, they're never going to live up to your ideals.
Yeah.
And that's why the Democrats, they don't care if the person is a vegetable in a wheelchair. They are going to keep voting for that person because that person is not about the person, it's about the cause that they represent.
Yep. They're a symbol. Folks, so two things. So with the left, you always know what you're going to get. And this is a great shame for people on the left that all of them think exactly alike and that none of them really can engage in actual debate about the serious, ideas and principles that they advocate. So they end up just being this amorphous blob of homogeneous thought with very little actual thought to back it up. And your alternative is Brad Schimmel or some other Republican or whatever other race. The left is a monolith of of ideas. There is no nuance there. Like the Alan Dershowitzes of the left are few and far between. Alan Dershowitz is the only Alan Dershowitz. He's the only person on the left who will call himself a civil libertarian, right, in his practice of the law, right? And then politically, vote for Biden and Harris, unapologetically. Who else is like that on the left? So that's the first thing. You know what you're getting with the left every single time. There is no nuance there between any of them. All of them think the same. And if any of them happen to be listening to me and disagree with me, prove me wrong. Please tell me that I cannot perfectly predict every single one of your positions and the rationale that you give for each of them. Second thing Unfortunately, if you're not ever happy with a Republican candidate that's running in whatever election, it's just a fact that we do not live in an age with Ronald Reagan's, or a better example, because I love Reagan, don't get me wrong, Reagan's awesome. He did some bad things, cough, cough, Medicare, okay? But we don't have Calvin Coolidge's. We don't have, Thomas Jefferson's. We don't have Milton Friedman's. Or, we have one Thomas Sowell, and he's the only one.
Yeah.
So, in the interim, until you actually get those people, and those people, grow up and, make their way into the political sphere, you might have to plug your nose, bite your tongue, and vote for, a Republican or conservative that you don't like, in order to avoid what is unambiguously a very bad alternative, which is whoever the left-wing candidate is.
Yeah, so just to reiterate that real quick. So it's Susan Crawford or Brad Schimmel. And if you vote for Susan Crawford or you don't vote for Brad Schimmel, here's a reminder of what your Supreme Court is going to continue to look like.
So in 1849, we're talking about a time when the only people that had rights were white men, correct? With property. White men who own property, sorry. Is that right?
I'll take your word for it, Justice
Okay,
Dowling.
well, you can take my word for it. You can go look up when anyone else got rights. What about everything that's happened since 1849 in the policy choice that you're talking about that some white men who were property owners made?
Counsel, I'd like to return to a statement that Justice Dowlett made to you. Are you aware of any principle of law that instructs judges or justices to disregard an enactment of the legislature based on the race or gender of the enactors?
I am not, Justice Bradley, and I'm not aware of any such enactment that says you should disregard a statute based on how old it is.
All right, that's all we have time for today. This is the week before Thanksgiving. We are not doing a podcast next week for Thanksgiving. So thank you for joining us this week. We'll continue to release clips to kind of fill the void, but we will see you again in 2 weeks. Thank you very much for joining us for this edition of the MacIver Report. See you next time.